Hi, welcome to episode 32 of the Gentle Knitter podcast. My name is Nicole and I'm coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario. Today is Wednesday, March 18th. I'm recording on a weekday, which is very unusual for me, but as most of you, I'm sure, I am working from home right now, and so I figured it would be an opportunity for me to set up the camera at the end of the day and just do a quick little catch up with you. I'm hoping that I'm pretty sure I will be working from home for a while, and so I'm hoping that maybe I can find some opportunities, in my lunch hour or after work to do recordings a little bit more often. It's my way of maybe offering you a visit with a friend. I think it's really important at this time that we stay in touch with people, even if we have to limit our in-person interactions, to still find ways of communicating with others and sharing with others. And so if that's something that can bring you a little bit of distraction and a little bit of pleasure in this kind of really, really tough time, then I would love to be able to do that. So that's my intention. I hope you're all well, and I hope that this is that you're doing okay despite the hardships that we are all facing right now. We're doing really, really well. Mark and I are both working from home. Marcel is very happy. He's like, he doesn't know what has happened, but he is happy for all the extra belly rubs and all the extra treats. So that's lovely. And luckily we can still go outside and still go for walks in the woods. And that has brought me a lot of comfort and a lot of stress relief. I'm doing really well. I know that last time I recorded was right before I was going into quarantine. This is the season. 2020 is the year of quarantine for me, because I had to actually go in quarantine for 2 weeks because of a treatment I received for a thyroid problem that I have. And so they treated it with radioactive iodine, which meant that I had to be isolated from others for 2 weeks. So did that. It went quite well. I didn't have any major side effects. The only thing is that it actually is making my thyroid symptoms worse for a short while, and I'm definitely feeling that. Still not sleeping very well, but other than that, I feel fine. And I think the hardest part of the quarantine was being away from Mark and from the dog and from my friends and family. But we are all living that right now. So yeah, it's and this is easier because I actually can have close contact with my family, but just not with the world outside. So hopefully by visiting with you here and on social media, we can all kind of stay in touch and get inspired by what we're doing and the things that we're doing to help sail through these difficult days. Certainly knitting has brought me a lot of comfort, as it always does. Knitting and spinning too. I've actually been doing a lot of spinning and really enjoying that. I'm also reading a lot more, which is wonderful. I decided to tackle the Mount Everest of literary works. I'm actually committed to reading the entire work of À la recherche du temps perdu by Marcel Proust, which is a huge, huge novel. It's several thousands of pages long. And I had it sort of broken into, I think, 5 or 6 novels. It's sort of a work that has been divided up into, I think, 6 different works. And I had read the first 3. I've read the first one like 3 times, and the second and third maybe once. And this is like throughout my life, I had always kind of thought, okay, I'm gonna start reading it. I'm gonna read the whole thing, and I would just always lose steam because it's, you know, it is quite a dense work, and it requires you know, quiet and concentration to really get into it. And so I would, you know, start it and then put it aside, and then several years later I'd be like, oh, I really want to read it now, so I'd start it all over again. And anyway, I've done that a few times, but this is the time. I am going to read À la recherche du temps perdu by Marcel Proust, because it's really, really beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful, I mean, he is an incredible writer, and he writes a lot about sort of memory, and about, there's a lot of melancholy and a lot of remembrances of things past, is I think the English translation of the title. And it really is a lot about, you know, thinking back on life, and on the sensations of being in a body, and having just the place that you occupy in the world. And so I don't know, I feel like it's really, it speaks to me at this time, you know, at this time where we're asked to kind of live inside a very small and restricted space, but we are still expansive beings. And anyway, I am really, really enjoying it. And it's yeah, it's like I said, a bit of an Everest, but I'm gonna do it this time. Anyway, you're probably not here to hear me talk about Marcel Proust. So why don't I get to a little bit of knitting before I lose my light. At Christmas, I had cast on, Christmas Eve, I cast on a shawl project, and for some reason I didn't really work on it that much. It's a pattern that it's a lace pattern that is still requiring me to pay attention to the chart, and so I think I was just busy watching movies and stuff and didn't want something I really had to concentrate on. But with everything that's going on, one of the things that I am trying to do is spend some time doing quiet things that require mindfulness, because I think that I am spending a lot of time watching the news and sort of taking in a lot of information, and it's good to sort of have these like moments where it's almost more of a meditative practice to work on something. So I'm knitting on a shawl called the Sprout Shawl. It's a pattern by Sylvia McFadden, and it is really beautiful. It's kind of a leafy lace pattern, and yeah, I'm really loving the effect so far. It's an asymmetrical shawl, a triangular shawl with a little garter border. And the yarn I'm using is this stunning Prado de Lana yarn. It's the Madrugar. The fiber comes from their sheep, Brigida and Bruce. I think they will shear specific sheep, and they'll spin that yarn, and so you kind of get the name of the sheep that is used. They're Romney sheep, so it's 100% Romney, a sport weight, 320 meters, and it's so beautiful. It's got a beautiful halo, which I think you can see there, but it also has a little bit of luster. And it's a 2-ply. It's very, it's kind of not a rigid yarn at all. It's quite springy, but also quite drapey. So I think it will make a really, really beautiful shawl. And I love this very soft color. It's like it's beigeish gray, a beautiful neutral color. And I'm really, really enjoying it. As I said, it's not an intuitive lace right now, but I think eventually, as I work more and more repeats of the chart, I will start to be able to knit on it without referring constantly to the pattern. But yeah, I really love it. You may remember me talking about a different project for this yarn. I wanted to knit a beautiful Donna Smith shawl. Actually, when I was at Rhinebeck, which is where I bought this yarn, I had seen a sample in their booth knit up in this yarn of the Donna Smith shawl that I wanted to knit. I believe it's called the Senate shawl, and it was in a previous issue of the Shetland Week magazine, the one that they put out every year. But I didn't buy enough yarn. I only got 2 skeins and I would have needed 3. So I was really bummed because I adore that shawl and the sample was so beautiful. I did kind of wonder, I kind of wrestled with the idea of buying another skein, but I really, 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 really don't need more yarn and felt that you know, I could knit something else that would be equally as beautiful. So that Donna Smith design I will definitely knit with something else in my stash when you know, when I get to it. So yeah, so the sprout shawl is kind of my pay attention project at this point. The other thing that I've been working on is a sweater from this magazine here, Rowan magazine, that is, it's Rowan 24. I believe it came out in the 90s. I have a lot of these old Rowan magazines, and they, you know, there's still some really great classic patterns in this thing that that, you know, I want to make. The pattern that I'm knitting is this pattern here. And it's a pattern by Kim Hargreaves. The pattern name is Betsy by Kim Hargreaves. It's a very simple raglan cardigan with a mitered collar and a seed stitch panel at the bottom and at the sleeves. I had knit this sweater, I think I talked about it in my last episode. I had knit this sweater. It was one of the first sweaters I knit for myself a long, long time ago when I first learned to knit. And I loved that sweater. It was really, I wore it a ton, but it wasn't, it was knit in part acrylic, and, you know, it got really stretched out and not great looking. So, you know, I got rid of it a while ago, but I always missed that sweater. So I decided to cast it on again, and this time I am using this yarn here, and it is Harrisville, their flywheel base, which is in the granite colorway, and this is a yarn that's actually very, very similar to Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. It is spun at the same mill, and so it has a similar feel. It's a little bit lighter and not as how do I want to put this? It has a little more strength than a Shelter, and I really love the colors. It's you know, from afar it reads as a gray, but when you look at it up close, it has like red and brighter blues and yellow, and it's a really, really pretty yarn. It's a DK weight, And okay, well, so I finished the back and then I started the front, and so this is the back. It's knit in pieces, and that's the back. And I'm working on the front, and I pinned them together because I just wanted to make sure that my raglan was all matching up. So yeah, so it's looking a little discombobulated. I've got the seed stitch detail at the bottom, and then of course just miles and miles of stockinette for the body. And so far so good. This is, you know, this is a more mindless project, and I've been working on it sort of here and there for the last couple of weeks. Yeah, I think this will be a great everyday, super wearable piece. And yeah, I'm loving the way the yarn is working up and the fabric that it's producing. Oop. Yeah, super pretty. I love seed stitch. It's a bit of a pain because you're just switching every stitch from knit to purl, but it's really pretty. Got this in a gorgeous project bag that was sent to me by a viewer a couple of years ago, and it's so beautiful. I love the fabric. It's I believe the country flower of South Africa. An attack made it. Yeah, what's next? The next thing I'm working on is a bit of a beast. A couple of weeks ago, Denise Bayron of Bayron Hand Knits started a cal for a beautiful cardigan design that she put out. It's called the Winds of Change jacket, and on a whim I just decided I needed to make one of those. And so here it is so far. I've got most of the body done. It's still on needles, and I'll talk about that in a sec. And I've made one sleeve, and I have to start the other one. So I have made modifications. First of all, I am hoping that I have enough yarn to make a longer version. Her version is quite cropped and it's super cute, but I wanted this to be like a jacket, something I would wear at this time of year, you know, over other things as a coat. And so I knit the body till I had the length that is called for in the pattern, and now I am sort of leaving those stitches because I'm doing the sleeves, and then whatever yarn I have left over, I will knit the rest of the body. I did modify the sleeves also. She has a really cool shaping of the sleeve where it starts off, you know, wide, but then it quickly kind of decreases and it kind of ends up looking a little bit batwing, which I really liked. But because I want this to be more of a coat, I wanted there to be a lot of room in the sleeves so that it would fit over if I'm wearing another sweater underneath. So I decided not to do any of that shaping. I just kept going so that I have this kind of like generous sleeve, and then I did a severe decrease at the cuff to make like a little puffy sleeve, which you know, I don't know, I think is really cute. It's kind of a style that I'm seeing more. I watched this podcast done by these two awesome ladies who own a yarn shop called Pompon Laine Café in Trois-Rivières, and they often will modify a pattern to kind of create these like little balloon sleeves. And so I was a little bit inspired by them. Salut les filles! And kind of wanted to do something similar. So because this takes more yarn than what was called for, and because I wanted to maximize my yarn, I figured let me finish the sleeves, and then whatever I have left can go into making the button bands, and I would try and make it as long as possible. I have like 4 skeins left, and I'm hoping that I can add several inches of length, but I don't know. Because the sleeves are taking up more yarn than the pattern calls for, it's hard for me to judge how much yardage I'm gonna end up needing. So I'm kind of playing it safe, and if it ends up being kind of a more crop jacket, that's okay too. The yarn I'm using is some very, very deep stash. This is a Rowan yarn. Where is my label? That's not it. It is a bulky yarn. I'm just going to try and remember. I'll find the tag and put it down below. It's discontinued yarn anyway. I think it's Rowan Yorkshire tweed. Yeah, it's a very, I've probably had this in my stash for like 20 years. It's a really, really old yarn, but beautiful. I love, 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 love the speckle, or not speckles, but the tweedy bits. And, you know, it's 100% yarn. It's 100% wool. It's quite soft. And I love the results so far. So, yeah, I think this will end up being a really, really useful and lovely piece. I'm knitting it on 6mm needles, and yeah, we'll hopefully have that done for next episode. In a recent Instagram post, I showed a photo of some socks that I'm working on and got a lot of questions as to what beautiful pattern I was doing, and it is the Into the Woods socks by Melody Hoffman, the Mandarines, a designer I've talked about before on the podcast. She's a wonderful designer, and it's just the sweetest little sock pattern with these beautiful little trees or branches or wheat sheaves, depending on how you look at them, but just a really sweet, sweet stitch pattern. It took me a few tries to kind of understand what it is I was doing. I read some of the other people's project notes and kind of then clued in on what I was supposed to do to create these little designs. The yarn I'm using is Mondim, but it's so it's the Rosa Parmars Mondim, but dyed by La Bien-Aimée, and it's in the quail colorway. You'll have to excuse my shaking hands. That's just a side effect of my thyroid problem. I have shaky hands, but it's really, really pretty. It's like soft beige with kind of pinky purpley undertones, and then these beautiful flecks of rust and yellow. And it's the yarn that Melody used to make her sample, and I just love them so much. So I decided to make my own, and I'm, now that I have the pattern, sort of now that I understand how to do the stitch pattern, it's very enjoyable. It's just really fun to see those little branches develop. It looks a little big, but I'm okay with that. This is a non-superwash yarn, and so even with hand washing, they tend to shrink up a tiny bit. So I'm happy if they have a little bit of extra room. And I have big feet, so they'll probably fit me great. Just mention the beautiful project bag they're in. It's a gorgeous Tiny Happy. Melissa Watsney is a maker in New Zealand, and she makes these beautiful hand embroidered project bags. I know you can get them, I don't if she still has her Etsy shop open, but I know that Loop London has some, I think there's some available right now on their website. But it's one of my favorite project bags. So sweet. So as I mentioned earlier, I have been doing quite a lot of spinning and just loving it. It's again, like I was saying earlier, one of those activities where you can just really kind of be quiet and get into a meditative groove and just feel like your blood pressure is just going down. And so I've been doing a lot of spinning, and when I was in quarantine, I gathered up all of my spinning fiber, and I had my blending board, and I made a bunch of rolags. This is just a few of the ones that I made. I made a huge pile, and what I did was I blended some Cormo that I had. The white that you see here is Cormo, like creamy white here is Cormo, and then this really pale kind of robin's egg blue was some BFL from, I believe it was a Fleece Artist. Actually, also the yellow was also Fleece Artist. And then I also added some strands of rust, and that was, I believe, some Louet spinning fiber. But yeah, I just basically made a bunch of these soft, sort of beachy colored rolags, and I have been spinning them up into singles, some really fine singles. Because they're prepped as rolags, they end up being I guess it's a semi what would I call it, semi woolen spun. I'm still spinning them kind of worsted forward draw, but because the fibers are kind of mixed up in a rolag, they come out, they're not all going in the right direction or the same direction. And so you end up with a slightly fuzzier ply than if, and not as, it's not as tightly spun. Usually I get a lot of twist. I guess that's still quite a bit of twist, but I usually get a ton of twist in my spun singles. But these ones are pretty relaxed. And so I'm hoping that I will have enough I'm gonna ply them. I'll do a 2-ply, and I'm hoping that I will have enough to do a really simple and cozy and rustic shawl. It'll be quite soft because, I mean, Cormo is super soft, but I'm hoping it'll be really puffy and fluffy, and I'll probably just make a really basic, maybe gartery type of shawl. But yeah, I'm so excited to have a hand spun shawl. I've never spun enough fiber to make a shawl, but I do think that I will have enough with this, and it'll just be a really pretty soft kind of icy cozy shawl. Lastly, I thought I would talk about a few publications that I picked up recently. The first one is the spring issue of Pom Pom Quarterly, and what a gorgeous edition this is. It was art directed by Ocean Rose. You probably know her as Ocean by the Sea, an amazing natural dyer. I've kind of shown you her beautiful yarns before. But yeah, it's very obvious to me that she art directed this issue because the photos are just absolutely gorgeous. The styling of it is amazing. The model is beautiful. And there's just so many pretty patterns in here. I mean, Pom Pom pretty much always knocks it out of the park, but this is a really beautiful issue. When I was talking earlier about those kind of puffy sleeves being in right now, this is a beautiful example of that. That pattern is the Bronte, no, sorry, it is the Bronte Swanwick is the designer. The pattern is called a loft pullover, and it is really super pretty. I continue to love this kind of nudie pink that is still so popular and so beautiful. There's also, yeah, there's several sweaters with these really pretty puff sleeves here. That one is called Nibla by Camilla Larson Asvale, I believe is how you pronounce her name. Oh, and I really love another kind of pinky sweater is this pattern here. It is the Carey pullover, and it was designed by Wenke Perterman, sorry, and knit in Woolly Mammoth Fiber Company BFL yarn. And yeah, the yarn for this is so gorgeous. Yeah, that is, I love just the texture of that pullover is really beautiful. Yeah, there's a really great article by Jacqueline Sislak. Oh my goodness, my names right now. And she is wearing this sweater here. It's not a pattern in the magazine, but it is a pattern you can get from her on Ravelry. It's called, I think it's called the Water Bearer, and I really love that pattern. It's so, and I mean, these photos, like Jacqueline looks so beautiful in that photo. It's a really great article, an interview with her. So yeah, I highly recommend this beautiful issue of Pom Pom magazine. And then I also got a bit of a treat. I got a gift certificate for my birthday for my local yarn store, and so I got the 52 Weeks of Socks book. This is really a treat because it's quite expensive, but it is, as far as I'm concerned, a coffee table book. It is that beautiful, which is no surprise because it's put out by Len Magazine, and you know, they just, aesthetically, they are just so up my alley. And there are just so many beautiful patterns in this book. These are beautiful socks by Helen Stewart. I would literally knit pretty much every pair of socks that is in this book, and wouldn't it be fun to have that as a project? Yeah, it's just typical Len Magazine styling, just really beautiful, kind of rustic and moody photos and gorgeous colors. Yeah, it would be really fun to to kind of have as a goal to knit all of those. Can you imagine? Like, you'd have the most beautiful sock drawer in the world. I haven't read, there's some text and articles. I haven't had a chance to read any of those yet, but looking forward to spending some time with this beautiful book. So, you know, if you have a little birthday money and you want to kind of treat yourself, this is a really, really beautiful publication. It's got a little ribbon. It's just, the cover is like this kind of linen, beautiful linen fabric. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. It's definitely a treat. I think that is it for me for today. It's really starting to get a bit dark. I'm starting to get a little bit cold. Oh, I did want to mention though what I was wearing. This is the East Light Shawl by Gudrun Johnson, and it just so happens that it's her birthday today, so happy birthday, Gudrun. It's a shawl that I knit many, many years ago, and I wear it all the time. It was knit out of Rowan Scottish tweed. Again, it's really, really old stash. And yeah, it's just a really lovely wearable piece. So yeah, that's I think that's it for me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, and if you've not subscribed, now's a really good time to subscribe, because like I said, I will be aiming to put out more content, and so if you don't want to miss any new video, you can get notification if you hit the bell, as they say. And I hope that you are all staying healthy and doing okay. And if you're not okay, you know, that is completely understandable, because this is a very, very stressful time. But hopefully we can look out for each other and send each other a little bit of warmth and comfort. So take good care, and I look forward to talking to you again very, very soon. All right. Bye.